Come on, alright. Wait, what was that? Did I just hear something? Oh.
Garou 2 is back!
Yes! Finally, after years of SNK saying that they're going through the motions, a resurrected Garou 2! City of the Wolves as they're calling it now? Okay, and what's this here? 2 Garou characters guest appearing in Street Fighter 6? Alright, that's kind of weird, but also that's actually pretty exciting, okay. I worry for CBS3's future though. Also the fact that I gotta wait a little bit longer because the supposed man that passed away is alive again. The original Fatal Fury timeline is about to go through a new journey and we're starting to see more and more of it right now, especially with the new footage. And they have more plans for the original timeline afterwards too. A new Art of Fighting game? I hope it plays good like 3 did. But yeah, new original timeline games. Also, Garou 2's trailers aren't disappointing too. Graphics now fully realized after 2 games, revamped moves, EX moves being special cancelable, new quality of life fixes to characters, new level 3 supers that look absolutely amazing! God, yes! We're so fucking back! Oh my god, I've waited for so long! So long! So I guess I get to talk about this now.
Produced by SNK.
Listen, I swear I'll work on Street Fighter 2 after this. It's just that Street Fighter 2 has so much to consider to the point where I have to think about what Street Fighter 2 even is for people in general. Also, Fatal Fury 1 gives me a chance to talk about what happened with Nishiyama after Street Fighter 1. So Street Fighter 1 did... well, I don't know how to describe it personally. It's honestly a toss-up whoever you ask, even in the Polygon SF1 article they did. Nishiyama himself believed that he kinda flopped but made a decent game, while others believed that he and Okamoto still did well. Tsujimoto was happy that it at least had a foothold, but the numbers were a bit low. Still in the tens of thousands, which is still great but not mind-boggling. Truly, in their baseball analogy, it was more of a double or a triple instead of a home run. Still though, talks about making a sequel were in production. There was just a problem. Okay, well, it was Street Fighter 2's development. There were a metric fuck ton of problems and ideas thrown about, which I'll go over when I actually do talk about Street Fighter 2's early stages in its own video. But, you remember when Nishiyama abandoned Spartan X mid-development because Tsujimoto invited him to Capcom? So he did it again. Sort of. See, while Tsujimoto was making Capcom out of Irem in the 80s, a man called Kawasaki Eikichi decided to found a company called Shin Nihon Kikaku, the original incarnation of SNK, in early 70s Osaka. Now that I think about it, both the companies are located in Osaka, to the point where their ward locations are in between the Kitaku ward. Anyways, in the latter half of the 80s, they set up an American subsidiary in California, and then decided to get down on some game development. Then the video game crash happened in '83, but that was more of an American developer side problem. We all know that Nintendo and other third-party developers kind of fixed the market, whatever. Not the main issue. We're talking near the 90s now and about the evolution of fighting games and the art they present. I'm moving on! But after the development of a co-op beat-em-up known as Street Smart, which, to be honest, man, I don't know whenever I'll be able to talk about beat-em-ups in separate videos as opposed to them being shoehorned into videos talking about fighting games that relate to them, because I might accidentally make a boring video no one wants. Even writing about beat-em-ups right now kind of makes me worry whenever I have to proofread scripts, since Brian's not that eager about beat-em-ups. I mean, I try to reason with him on how some beat-em-ups can actually be fun, especially with co-op in mind. But then I have to remember beat-em-ups like Street Smart, where it's all boss fights, and you can't feel the impact of your hits, so it feels like a button mash free play fest, where you're not thinking and putting quarters in just to see how it goes. I mean, I can corner carry the enemy and loop him to death, but not all beat-em-ups are created equally, is what I'm trying to say. Also, the teams over at SNK wanted to try something better in terms of arcade hardware. Yeah, making arcade cabinets is fun, but there's a lot of things to focus when developing them. How you allocate your data and sprites and chipsets, smooth development and execution, fucking anti-piracy features, you know, the main issues of dealing with development as such. So not only did they need a new cabinet, but a set of new games. They had some of the tech down though. Their friends at Alpha Denshi, or ADK, were ready to set up cabinet hardware specifications through Fukatsu Eiji around December 1989, but nothing yet. So SNK decided to send out headhunters, and lo and behold, Nishiyama was contacted. It took some convincing, but after all was said and done, Nishiyama left along with Matsumoto and some others, but Okamoto stayed. We'll get to Okamoto during SF2, but he was kinda left to manage a bunch of stuff related to SF2's development. Naturally, Shimoda was pissed at Kawasaki, quite possibly because of the fact that he used headhunters, but weirdly enough, most of the devs and whatnot were actually cool with each other, even with the progressing years to come. Regardless, Nishiyama was then involved with two things: finalizing the development of the Neo Geo, and then making a game for it.
Exciting Neo Geo!
In terms of the Neo Geo's development, he's the reason why the main MVS cabinet used separate ROM game cards, and why the AES console version was created. Also helps that he wanted to make the system cheaper in countries that were ripe with piracy. Similarly to how indie devs mark down games heavily in similar regions. Honestly, given how he helps out with developing hardware and software like this, if Miyamoto is considered the grandfather of video games, may Nishiyama be remembered as the great-grandfather. And given how other Capcom employees had to essentially leave their companies, Nishiyama and most of his team was essentially a godsend. Fucking Inafune wishes he was this lucky instead of trying to flaunt 3 ideas way too fucking soon. But in terms of the new games he was making, I guess he had an epiphany with Street Fighter 1, and remembering how he made Trojan as a better Spartan X, the next game was going to be a better Street Fighter 1, which is for the best. I don't think he was ready to figure out how Street Fighter 2 was being developed with its new combo structure, so he decided to go ahead with what he knew best and how he wanted to fix the issues of Street Fighter 1. The problem though is that Fatal Fury 1 released 6 months after Street Fighter 2. So there's no way you're not stopping people from shitting on Fatal Fury 1 as a crappy SF2 clone. Which, yeah, it's a little undeserved, but people didn't know back then. Even Nishiyama had to clear it up from time to time.
でもこれ負けたなとちょっと思いました正直。
先出し、先で出るかと思います。
いやいや。
But both Nishiyama and Okamoto were kind of correct. We were fresh off of new discoveries into a genre that was now cemented, not going back to a better version of a prequel. We wanted Street Fighter 2, not Street Fighter 1 the good edition. Oh god damn it. At the end of the day though, both Street Fighter and Fatal Fury are Nishiyama's designs, making their connection whether it be in CVS, Tekken, Smash, and hell, now Street Fighter 6 too. All the more powerful. Even if Street Fighter was there, so was Fatal Fury, as much as a poor man's Street Fighter as it was. Hell, even being labeled as the poor man's Street Fighter didn't stop them from showing some neat stuff with each later installment. Even if it took Nishiyama away from the whole of Fatal Fury 2 so he could try his hand to match the power of Street Fighter 2 until Fatal Fury 3. Yeah, he only finally managed 4 years after, and I'm wondering why the absence was. I mean, if we could throw him a bone, we could knock off 1 year because he was also the producer for KOF 94. But if it means anything for where we are now, Fatal Fury 1 was able to do well on its own alongside SF2 for what it wanted to fix. Also, think about it for a sec. If Fatal Fury 1 did drop dead, how the hell would we be here now at this point in time? But enough of me trying to almost suck Nishiyama's cock. It's time to talk about what he fixed with Fatal Fury, Garou Densetsu. I'm sorry, I mean King of Fight... Wait, no. Not King of Fighters. Shikume no Tatakai. Yeah, Fatal Fury is the original moniker of the King of Fighters name. Which makes me sad and slightly miffed when someone just looks at a Fatal Fury character and immediately points and just says, "Oh, this guy from KOF!" Like, do these original games not matter at all? Hopefully not. I mean, I gotta go through each of these games eventually, so let's see what SNK considered the future. Alright, once again, thank you, 5K, for having a ROM set on the ready. Now I just gotta...
Heading to...
What the fuck? Wait, who the fuck is... Where'd you get this number? What the fuck? Who's in my walls?
Are you playing the
Version
arcade
you're
version of Fate
getting.
24?
What do you mean?
For 25
You
cents.
actually
Oh,
play a
you're
console port of
gonna spend.
console port is actually better than the original.
It's so much better. You can also get a better $5. Stupid. Oh man.
Fine, here's your goddamn console ports for that sweet, delicious gamer clout you want to witness so much. The two best known ones being the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis ones. The Super Nintendo port we can blame on Takara. Yes, that Takara, the toy company that later merged with Tomy in 2006. And it's coded like a piece of shit. For one, you don't have planes, so you're essentially playing Street Fighter 1 with Fatal Fury characters. And this move interpreter is such a piece of shit that it'll give fucking French bred move interpreters a run for their money. I even genuinely believe that this move interpreter makes Street Fighter 1's extremely shitty move interpreter look like a fucking wet dream. At least I'm confident when I negative edge most of the time in Street Fighter 1. This move interpreter makes me negative edge right after I input the special on the release of the button. It's making me feel like I'm getting this shit on accident. I feel like I'm performing moves whenever I don't even want to. And on top of that, see this power wave? This is me trying to match Burn Knuckle. Yeah, think about that for a second. Future old man here. You can tell because my voice is shot after, screaming in Evo. But I got japed here. See, the emulator requires diagonal inputs, even though for Fightcade it's, this should be commonplace instead of me having to set up diagonal inputs, so I tried it again on an actual controller this time. And some of the weird input issues that I talked before are still there, but thankfully no weird negative edge bullshit happened when I tested it. And this time around there was no weird melty interpreter kind of situation. The port was able to register diagonal inputs a little better this time around, but still, there's still weird issues whenever you try to input moves. Which also led to me being able to beat the port as well, so yeah, there's that. A little better than what I initially wrote down, but still, I'd rather you not play this port. Just go play the original. Oh, and also Takara didn't understand the concept of double KO, so if you manage to double KO, the CPU wins. Even after this, SNK still gave Takara the keys to porting their games to 16-bit consoles. I don't know why. Fucking awful port. No wonder shit like this made them do the merger. The Mega Drive/Genesis port, on the other hand, was handled by a company known as Gabrion. Unlike the Super Nintendo port, it's actually fairly decent, but because the Genesis was created before the Super Nintendo, even though both have the same amount of ROM storage for their cards, and since this was before the Street Fighter 2 ports, both Billy and Huajai were relegated to cameos, which sucks, but oh well, shorter game. Weirdly enough, this also means that the port's devs just added the other player characters you didn't select as secret levels for some baffling reason. The people you fight against also got modified move lists, and your moves match the Japanese boards on Fatal Fury 1. I'll explain this later. And it actually controls almost similar to the main version, albeit some weird timings with hit registration, grabs being snappier and weird, and why does it cause screen shake? But still though, an actually solid port. I was able to beat it even with its weirdness. Granted, I used 2 continues, but still a nice feat of design. Also, both ports allow you to play as the CPU characters minus the final boss, which is a pretty nice touch. Thing is though, both ports were released at a bad spot. See, the Super Nintendo version was finalized in late 1992. And the West didn't get both ports around 93. And it would have been fine for their release times if it wasn't for the fact that Fatal Fury 2 was right around the corner for Christmas 1992. To add a bit more insult to injury though, think about the modern era for a second. In a time where we now have access to a bunch of versions of games, including being able to now enjoy perfect ports from anywhere with your friends, why would you use outdated ports as your only source of experience when original Fatal Fury 1 is
Right there!
all readily accessible at the palm of your fingertips? All I'm saying is that yeah, experiencing the ports is great and all, but my main point is why hinder yourselves? For the bit, we could do better. Also, if you wanted me talking about ports, I'll talk about good and interesting ports later when we get to SF2. And listen, I know in the West, Takara took publishing rights for both ports, but in terms of the Gabrion port, it feels like them just taking other people's homework and slapping their name on it like they did something good. At least their revenue was cut short in Japan because the publishing rights went straight to Sega themselves. As for other ports, anything I didn't list is close to the original arcade releases, yes, including the issue written Sharp 68000 release. I'd go on about how close each one is to the original MBS release, but there's a bigger fish to fry than that. More than a decade before 1991, a martial artist by the name Jeff Bogard adopted 2 kids, Terry and Andy. These two, after being street orphans, lived happily in the fictional Southtown, Florida. while Terry learned parts of the fighting style Hakyokyu from Jeff. But then Jeff kind of fucked up in 1981. See, he had a scroll passed down from his teacher Tung Fu Ru that one of his old friends wanted. That friend in particular was Geese Howard, a bastard of a crime boss who then made a 10-year-old Terry and a 9-year-old Andy witness him beating Jeff to death. The scroll though, not important yet, you'll see what it is after this game. All you gotta know is that Terry and Andy, after witnessing this travesty, decided to finish training their martial arts before taking revenge. Andy, even with some Hakyokyu knowledge, moved to Japan for a bit in order to learn ninjutsu and empty-handed Koppokken from a man by the name of Shiranui Hanzo. Terry, on the other hand, decided to wander about the US while also training under Tung in order to perfect his fighting style of MMA-esque street fighting. Then as 1991 rolls around, yeah, the Fatal Fury games usually take place the year they're released. Terry and Andy come back to pay respects to Jeff while immediately befriending the Muay Thai kickboxing champion Joe Higashi, who informs them that Geese set up a tournament in Southtown known as the King of Fighters. The three then set off to beat Geese through said tournament. Yeah, it's kind of weird that I'm starting with the story now this time around given how I handled SF1 and Fight Fever. But I'd at least try to hook you in before talking about the game's controls and what each quarter does when you insert it. It'll make what I'm talking about next sweeter, I promise. Anyway, let's put in a coin to experience the Legend of the Hungry Wolf. Oh, son of a bitch! First up, since we're on the Neo Geo again, we gotta learn a new control scheme for each game. This game's no exception too, even as one of the launch titles. We got A for punch, B for kick, and C for throwing, with D not being used. A really big departure from the standardized string system, a single punch and kick? You'd think that means we're back to the SF1 proximity pressures, but no, that'd be stupid, and also, you want to break your cabinet? Instead, certain moves, specifically standing punch, has 3 proximity moves based around distance. Like we'll need it. Nah, kid. This time around, some normals actually work and have weight with their impacts compared to Street Fighter 1. Mostly. Some moves have a kind of lingering hitbox issue that's just baffling whether you either hit or get hit. If anything, the jumping normals still aren't tweaked well. They don't have good impacts, and getting hit by them makes you just scratch your head and say, "That hit?" for both the dealer and the receiver. Because they also have the lingering hitbox issue as well. Because of this, air-to-airs are a gamble since you can't gauge them well. Also, doing an early jumping normal is a bit of suicide in this game since you can't follow it up after and you're essentially in so much recovery that landing makes you minus. We also have a line or plane system as well, but it's a bit underdeveloped. For you, the player, certain moves can cause the opponent to essentially get knocked back into the background. But you won't know how each move can cause it. If anything, the CPU can just choose when to put you in the back lane more than you can. Or even at times put themselves in said lanes. Once both players are in separate lanes, you can still move left and right, but pressing up or down will move you to the plane the opponent is on. Pressing the attack buttons, however, will make you jump to the opponent's plane with an attack. The opponent can do this as well, to the point where the both of you will constantly whiff this move trying to gamble on who hits who until an attack successfully lands and you're both on the same plane. I dub this the Dance of Joy. But what we're here for now is the specials. Did they fix the abhorrent input leniency from Street Fighter 1 and not slap negative edge over our heads like a bandage? Well, yeah, they did. Granted, it's not a perfect fix, there's still some high input speeds that'll cause dead zones or normals to come on instead of what you want. But we're not on just frame motions like Street Fighter 1. There's also a couple of things to note for specials as well. Depending on what region or board you play on, the 3 have alternative inputs for their specials. For Andy and Joe, 3 of their specials have different inputs, and these inputs seem familiar to how later games made you input some of these moves. Terry, however, only gets 1 change, which is weird because I remember a screenshot of Japanese boards allowing Rising Tackle with a DP input, but I guess that wasn't the case, and Rising Tackle via a DP motion was a KOF invention. Either way, you really have to eye that title screen or platform you're playing it on, and then you have to remember how you have to input said moves. Not that bad of an issue since you only have 4, and some are better to remember than others, but still noticeable. Even with the input leniency fixes though, they still present another problem with the move interpreter. With the charge moves, they want you to be precise with how you end the input. To demonstrate this, I have to show footage from an SF game. See, in most fighting games with their anti-air charge moves, once you ready the charge, you can use any up input in order to execute the move. So, forward, back, or neutral up. On fight sticks, specifically the Japanese square gauge sticks, this is a bit of a godsend since most charge characters usually want to charge with the down back input. The problem with Fatal Fury 1's charge motion is that, well, let's look at Rising Tackle again. So charge down and then press up, right? So you can still hold down back in order to store your charge. And then you think that you can move the stick to up back in order to do the rising tackle, right? What? Wait, that's odd. Why isn't it working? Oh. It really wants neutral up only, huh? And you'd think that's because they coded their move interpreter like shit. Sort of. It's more of a side effect of other charge inputs in the game, specifically charge inputs that required an up forward input. Yes, pressing up and forward. Also, Andy's Zaneiken in US boards. I fucking pity Andy players trying to do standard input on that one. You poor bastards can't down back your way out of this one. Nah, you gotta input raw standing sonic booms with your body in America. With Joe though, it's a bit hilarious that for some reason the devs wanted you to keep your charge motion in different ways. Also, I realized as I was getting footage of inputs, some of the moves were later changed to be a tiger knee input, which doesn't sound all that bad, but the final input mirrors the same issues of the charge moves. So if you don't time the correct up input with your button presses, well, tough shit, have a jumping normal with immense recovery and your daylight's knocked out of you, you goddamn sucker. You fool, you absolute buffoon.
Oh, man, can't do crack shoot.
As for the specials, all three of the characters share a standard amongst themselves. Each has a projectile, an anti-air, okay, maybe not on Joe, and a forward advancing move. Rather, each character has two of them, and they share different properties. For Andy, you have Zaneiken, as I mentioned before, and Kuhadan. These two can both anti-air, but Zaneiken is your main move to meaty either itself or a projectile knockdown. More on that later. Joe's got a similar thing with slash kick and tiger kick, although as stated earlier, the latter is supposed to be a DP, but I don't know, there's no property listings for this game, because who cares, am I right? Don't come at me in the comments about the SRK wiki showing certain hit advantages. They're barely even listed, and fighting game boomers won't share secrets as much as they should. And keep in mind, this is an old ass game no one is willing to experiment with, so haha. Also, Bakuritsuken, the TNT punch, it's a decent meme. You can meaty with it, and if you get all the hits with it, it's pretty nice with its knockdown on the last hit. But now for Terry. Crack Shoot is one of your two anti-airs you should be using, because Rising Tackle sadly doesn't cut it. It doesn't have info frames like the other games, and has immense startup for what you have to deal with in single player. On a side note though, I remember some discussion as to what Rising Tackle even is, because it's technically an enigma. It's on punch, even though its animation and hitboxes usually suggest that it hits with the leg that's screwing upwards. Or in the case of the OVA, the one time they showed it, an OTG with the knee. Then again, I don't want to think about the OVAs. They're technically a weirder alternative version of the original timeline that involves Terry having to lose a lot of women, and I don't know if I want to think about one character in particular having to suffer that. Anyways, where was I? Oh, right, Crack Shoot being a knockdown on anti-air. It also has weird ground properties where if the enemy's up close, you can hit multiple times with the leg itself, but it won't knock down once it ends. And then we have Burn Knuckle, and oh kids, let me tell you how beautifully fucked this move is. See on the surface, right? Nothing special, just an advancing fist that hits and causes knockdown. And if they block, you're still plus. If they try blocking the move point blank or get hit by it point blank though, it has 2 hits on it for some reason. Not important though, the second hit, the one that's the knockdown, that's the important one. See, the reason why I've been bringing up knockdowns is because this move, Zaneiken and Slash Kick, theoretically Tiger Kick, have the magic property of being able to set up meaties. Not just with other moves, but with themselves as well. The CPU most of the times will take the meaty and get hit, more on that later, but I wanted to see if any of these were blockable. So I did a training dummy block setting as best as I could and tried to set up a meaty after knockdown with either Burn Knuckle, Slash Kick, and Zaneiken, while having another controller set to block after the knockdown. And let me tell you, having to juggle a fight stick with a controller isn't easy, but I did it, and as you can see, I can't block the meaties from Andy just fine. Terry and Joe though, so I don't know why you're wearing the code that this causes this sort of unblockable situation, but the reason why I couldn't block the second Burn Knuckle or Slash Kick is because once you get hit, for some reason, all of your inputs aren't readable until you fully go back to neutral from the knockdown, especially if the meaty is a Burn Knuckle or a Slash Kick. So if you really get your timing right, you can just kill the opponent with one special move. In single player, we'll discuss this tactic a little bit more into detail. For multiplayer though, it's jank that might infuriate the opponent to rage quit.
I don't know.
If it collides with their body, I mean.
Yo, that was unblockable. And it knocks down.
No,
So if I get a knockdown and I meaty tornado, you just die.
Yeah.
Alright, I know the setup.
Right, I should actually talk about multiplayer now that we're here. This game actually tries a lot of stuff to retain your quarters worth as much as possible while maintaining such an experience with it. It was even one of Fatal Fury 1's, shall we say, main attractions. First off, if one player is going through the ladder and the other person joins in, you get to experience a prototype dramatic battle where both players fight against the CPU. That's right, a whole 4 years before Alpha 1 had it as a bonus mode, complete with separate health bars for each player and everything. It's still clear that it's a prototype though. For one, if both players are on the same plane, projectiles can cause friendly fire, so stuff like this can happen.
I hate ducking. Ducking is like.
I'm dead!
Don't worry, I got him.
Alright.
Fucking minutes.
And if one of you is down, the character who's knocked out still has their collision box on, so you get situations like these.
Score so forwarding.
Oh, cool.
Either way, once you win, you then are put into a versus match to see who can keep the run going. If you both start from the title screen, you can just choose to either have a versus match or tackle a stage early before going into versus. Still though, not a bad way to extend the longevity of your credit. At least versus works, but like I said, once the knockdown happens, pray to Jesus your opponent misses up their inputs. The music during versus though is real nice, but hey, haven't I heard this earlier? I mean, it's a good revival of a nice track, kind of a reimagining of what Street Smart in general tried to be. I should also mention one more thing in the gameplay mechanics before going into single player though. Yep, couldn't run away from it now, even if Street Fighter 2 is around the corner. Stun exists in this game, same as other fighters essentially. Get hit too much and you have a bit of a moment where you just can't do anything and you need to shake off your nausea. Mash the buttons to try to break free earlier. Funny enough, you can cause this to the CPU, but it's legit rare. I have these examples recorded, but don't bank on it happening. So now let's talk about Fatal Fury 1's other main attraction.
And now for our feature presentation.
So 8 stages, and you get to choose one of the first 4 you fight against. For this run, and every other recording to get footage, I started with Richard. Also keep in mind on the start screen, if you do versus first, you fight ducking right after you finish your match. The later progression involves 3 others before you finally fight Geese. A simple arcade route, but what about the opponents in said route? I'll try to detail a lot of things related to them, obviously way more than how I handled Street Fighter 1, but here's your problem. Remember what I told you about the bare-knuckle knockdown loop? Because that's what single player is centered around. Can you keep them taking the meaty loop until they die? Also, unlike multiplayer, the CPU will foolishly take the hit most of the time depending on who you fight. I say most of the time because, well, you know how when I did Fight Fever, I went into the sub dip switches of the game? So I did it again this time around, just to show off how the AI is on the default difficulty, which is on 5 for some reason, and the max difficulty 8. The run shown for the 1cc is on the max difficulty run with this video, but I'm also using other footage for both level 5 and level 8 just to explain how the opponents work. If you're playing the AES port, just know that the difficulty scale equates to these numbers in MVS, you know, in 2s. Obviously I'm choosing Terry for the run since him beating Geese is the canon ending. There's technically no difference in the endings, just whoever you beat Geese with does one final hit, and we cut to a cliffside which says select a character. Still though, we know who comes out on top. I mean, even tier list wise. I'm just assuming it looked like this in terms of both single player and multiplayer, but who knows? No one's ever gonna calculate this shit.
I wonder what the tier list looks like in this game.
I think Joe's correct.
Do you think he's top 3?
That's a good one. Yeah, he's probably strong top 3. Top 3.
Top. What even is Andy?
He's probably bottom 3.
That's fun.
Just because I fucking hate that guy. Fuck him.
With all that said, we start the inclusive American tournament against Capoeira. Richard Meyer's up for us, as I said, and the original Pau Pau Cafe doesn't disappoint. A Brazilian restaurant that has a fighting stage? Really nice, but the fact that the background also reflects the music? God, listen to that. Take the atmosphere in. This is what the game tries to be, every time depending on where you are at the moment. Granted, it works most of the time though, or sometimes they transition back to the OST reflecting who you're fighting against. But most of the tracks are still pretty good. Oh right, the current Richard fight. See those bars up there? Yeah, they're not just for show. He'll use them in order to do a set of kicks that can technically counter Burn Knuckle, but whatever, let him finish, or if you feel fancy, anti-air him with crack shit to start to knock down hell. He has some other stuff too, like jumping into the background line or setting you to it as well, or even the get off me spin and the other stances he has, but nah, if anything, he's knocked down. Just remember timing your Burn Knuckle like this to him and almost everyone on the ladder. Legit, this is why I say that Fatal Fury 1's hella easier than Street Fighter 1. It's bad about what released simultaneously with Fatal Fury 1. After every completed stage before Geese, you also get a cutscene with Geese gauging your journey up the ladder. This also changes depending on who you select, obviously. As for the dialogue, let's just say that the localizers are kinda loopy at their jobs because it was the early 90s, so you get some weird dialogue like this. Even though it's actually correct and well done. Next is Michael Max at Sound Beach. A little bit of a spike difficulty. For one, the stage is one lane, like standard fighters, so if you get knocked into the background, you're gonna get bounced back. Thankfully it does no damage, but still, it takes a while for you to recover because, well, it's still a knockdown. Also, even for early age sprites, the background characters kind of look like ass, and this song isn't one of the tracks I like in the OST. Mostly because the way the intro starts makes me think that Mike Myers and Dana Carvey are gonna pop out and start singing the movie version of the Wayne's World theme. It's kind of funny if you think about it, because the movie was 1 year after this. Like, they predicted how it opened or something. And no, before you write in the comments that I forgot to talk about the ASTs, I didn't, and even then, I don't think the AST version of the C-Notes is going to do it any favors. Also, Michael himself gets the short end of the stick. Out of all the fighting game characters SNK ever created, him not being as fondly remembered is an understatement. Even the guy who replaces him in the next game suffers the same fate. And he has Joe's projectiles too, although it's named Tornado Upper instead. Later difficulties give him an invincible backdash as well, and although we can't have something like that until the next game, we can at least exploit it to our advantage. Remember when I said that most of the time the enemy will take the next meaty Burn Knuckle like an absolute buffoon? Well, for level 8, the AI will start to do invincible reversals on Wake Up. He's the first one to demonstrate this, and there's really only one other character that can take advantage of this. So what do you do if you don't have him set to lower difficulties? See, after the backdash, he'll take the next hit you do. Just shove a normal in him after he evades a Burn Knuckle and just try to knock him down. He'll even take a power wave after a reversal backdash if you time it just right too. Also, on the projectile, it's not as intoxicating as it seems. Yeah, there's moments where I trade with him and such, but it's not that big of a deal. If he shoots another one, just jump over it and give him an aerial attack. He can anti-air, but within this scenario, he rarely does it. Also, the projectile itself is a bit funky since his hitbox doesn't spawn up close properly, so you can just hit him with a crouching normal as punishment if he does so. Joe technically suffers this as well, but whatever, Michael's cooked.
Bonus area.
Alright, this thing. I don't know, it's just a minigame to give you more sweet points for the high score from way yonder. Whatever, not important. For most runs, I just did the first one and proceeded to ignore the second and third ones, which are the same. But someone's gonna bitch about me not playing the other higher levels, so here's footage of me beating the ones after the first. After every bonus level, you're also given the tutorial on one of your specials. As I mentioned before, it changes with what board or region you're on. Thankfully, you don't need this because we have the internet, and I already showed you the inputs beforehand. Still find it weird that they teach you the projectile last though. Oh hey, it's Tongue. How about that? I guess he wanted to try some matches as well.
Round 1.
Okay, this seems like a reasonable fight, but I don't know what's... Oh, what the fuck? Nah, I'm just kidding. He has added defense during this mode, but since the transformation just leaves him vulnerable after he's done pounding his fist on his chest, just meaty him until he goes back to normal, and then shoved another move down his body. Granted, it's a timing thing. If you screw up, you might have to claw your way back up because he's a little sporadic during this. You should be fine though. I mean, his standard recovery animation makes timing meaties hard, but it's nothing that severe. At the end of round 1 though, a storm approaches and it starts raining. This can be a bit hard to see what's going on, but just Burn Knuckle him and you should be fine. If you're lucky, there's a very rare chance you can trick him into not transforming. I'm surprised I even did it for this video. Huh? Then again, him hulking out like this is a thing in the later games, but the berserk part of it isn't a thing anymore. And no, he doesn't die in the game. OVA is a separate timeline. He's fine in this and in the KOF timeline. Stop bringing up the OVA!
Terry Bogard versus Duck King.
Duck King's more of the same at this point. I mean, he has head spin, which might be the best version of the move, since he'll clash with projectiles and if you block it, he'll move lanes. His AI is a bit more aggressive too. Whatever, just burn knuckle him. But what's this? Right, this is the other character with an invincible reversal on level 8. This time it's a slide. So it'll low profile under burn knuckle. Honestly, just alternate the pattern by shoving a power wave in his face after the knockdown. There, you're good. Now we're into the latter 3 characters, but honestly, the next 2 are just more of the same. Hwajai is a bunch of nothing. If anything, he's like a worse Joe with Tongue's half-health mechanic. So you round start burn knuckle him twice, and then one of Geese's men throws him some alcohol. And he drinks it. So after he takes the second swig, you then put him in the burn knuckle loop again for even think about doing something stupid like that. If you screw up punishing him, which is kind of understandable, sometimes we make mistakes, but it happens. You have to deal with him doing this version of the Tiger Kick, but not burn knuckle him. The cutscene beforehand with Geese summoning Ridden, is supposed to be intimidating, right? Well, sadly it doesn't work because 1, they fucked up his name in the cutscene, and 2, he's a little underwhelming.
Terry Bogard versus Raiden. Round 1. Fight!
He can't reversal grab for 1. Oh wait, never mind, the game's trying to call me a liar now. Thanks, you little fuck, real nice. His other 2 moves are okay, I guess. His kicks can counter burn knuckle, but he won't try to input read them. And that wrestler misspit is, yeah, you can prematurely burn knuckle it and either get hit while it's still active or counter him just before the spit comes out if you time it right. And it absorbs projectiles like crazy, but on whiff, just punish him with the burn knuckle loop. I'm more concerned about
Terry Bogard versus Billy Khan.
Yeah, that's the hurt. No, not Geese, surprisingly. You'd think so, but we'll discuss that when we get there. Billy's the more spastic one, and getting the 1cc from him was a chore on level 8. I had to reset the board every time I lost because I didn't want to use a save state for this run specifically. See this fucking command normal? I've lost runs to this thing because it crosses you up depending on his position or is near unblockable. I can't tell. Grabbing him on level 8 isn't an option either since he has a get off me move. And then he has a stick throw. Do not jump backwards against it, you won't be able to block it. He also has an innate thing that happens whenever he does his stick throw or by chance his staff breaks on knockdown, where he'll enter this cowering state. He blocks everything during it and can't be grabbed. He only returns back to normal once one of Geese's men tosses him a new staff, but because he's jumping up to grab it, well, you know how this goes. Honestly, opening him up is the main issue, but once you get it, you should be fine. Now it's time for Geese. Throughout this whole route, he's been getting angrier and angrier as you progress, even declaring he'd kill you like how he killed Jeff. After beating Billy, you then have a bit of a celebration with 2 women before Geese's men come to take you to him. If anything, it looks like they were disguised as the women, but come on, you'd wear full suits with a disguise like that? That'd be too uncomfortable. But they take you to Geese, and this is where the final boss starts.
Round 1.
More likely, he'll always try to round start Reppuken, which in this game is a much stronger power wave. In fact, it's so powerful, it'll win against every player's projectile. He also has a counter stance for every strike you try to do to him. His lane attack will always win against yours, and his punch and kick normals are kinda cracked. If he doesn't round start Reppuken, expect it coming. If you're struggling, you're going to make hard time to recover and start the loop on him. So this boss is very high momentum based, either he beats you first or you beat him. But like I said, if he tries to round start Reppuken, just counter hit him with burn knuckle and start the loop, honestly. This is why I say Billy's a bit harder. I mean, they tried to make Geese crack, but you know how it is. Once you beat him, you then kick him off his own building. Also, the date is supposed to be 91, but the Neo Geo follows the internal clock and tries to match the date when you beat the game. The problem though is that the game has a Y2K bug in its code, so oops. Either way, welcome to the newborn legend alongside Street Fighter.
You can stop, old man. You can stop, old man.
No.
You can stop, old man.
No.
You can stop, old man.
No.
You can stop doing that. Stop doing that.
And Hurricane Uppers, half circle forward. I mean, yeah, half circle. Oh my god, bro. He knocked the fuck out of both of you guys.
That's what you want. No.
No. Oh.
Look at that scaling. I can't believe this was a Neo Geo.
Ooh, the anti.
Yo, you see that? Like an anti-air slide?
Okay, never mind. I'm definitely worried for CBS3's future now.